everybody. I'm Chairman Dan Newhouse. I want to welcome you to our Congressional Western Caucus and the HEAT Energy Action Team, or we affectionately refer to them as the HEAT Team, forum. Thank you for being with us, and thanks to all of our witnesses for taking time out of your busy schedules. We really appreciate that to be with us today. I also want to thank my co-host, Representative Jeff Duncan from the, it says here, the great state of South Carolina.
Great state
Is
in the
that a true
eye of the
statement?
hurricane.
In the eye of the hurricane. So thank you. He also serves as the co-chair of the team. I hope this goes without saying that all of you know that today is part of National Clean Energy Week. And Western Caucus members are working very hard to highlight clean energy advancements that are happening or seeing throughout rural America. And while there are plenty of new and emerging clean energy technologies to celebrate, which there are, we also recognize that clean energy resources like wind and solar, hydropower, nuclear, must be part of what we refer to as all of the above, or more recently also referring to as any of the above portfolio. So today, our forum is aptly titled American Energy Dominance, Clean Energy Advancements in the Oil and Gas Sector. Now that's something you never thought you'd see in the same sentence, is it? And that's exactly what we're here to discuss. The United States leads the world in global emissions reductions, and we're very proud of that. And that is in large part due to the innovation and the progress that's being made within the oil and gas industry. While the president and our friends on the other side of the aisle blame oil and gas, we understand that it is truly these companies in this industry who provide critical, baseload, reliable, traditional energy to meet the great growing American demand. They're the ones that are paving the way for the use of new technologies like carbon capture, utilization, and more. And we're excited to hear about some of those things. In my district in Central Washington State, we're very proud of our clean energy portfolio. But even we, who enjoy baseload carbon-free energy like hydro and nuclear, understand that we absolutely, and I want you to understand this as well, we cannot afford to eliminate energy resources if we're gonna literally keep the lights on. We are watching in real time the results of those kind of policies as we watch what unfolds in Europe when countries eliminate the use of oil and gas. And unfortunately, it seems, and I'd be happy to be told I'm wrong about this, that the Biden administration, this seems to be their goal. As members of the Western Caucus and HEAT, we know how devastating the misguided actions by the administration have been on rural America. In addition to generating the energy we need to use here at home and export to our allies overseas, the oil and gas industry creates jobs, generates revenue for schools, infrastructure projects for public safety in rural communities throughout the West and across the United States. If we allow Democrats in Congress or in the administration to continue down this road, we will find ourselves in a situation, and no offense to my friends from the Golden State, but to the situation they find themselves in California, where we're seeing threats of blackouts, skyrocketing energy practices, and ridiculous bans that hit the most vulnerable the hardest. As chairman of the Western Caucus, I've worked to lift up the stories of energy producers like our witnesses that are here today, to educate our colleagues, other members of Congress, as well as the general public about why this energy development is so critical to both our individual communities and our national security. So I think this forum is very timely, not only because it is National Clean Energy Week, but because as Americans across the country face skyrocketing energy costs, rising gas prices, and now more than ever, it's very important to celebrate how the oil and gas industry is contributing to our energy dominance while protecting the environment. Two things that are not mutually exclusive. As I said earlier, I have an excellent panel of guests here today, experts really. We're very happy about that. But first, before we get to them, I want to yield to my friend, my colleague, fellow member of the Western Caucus and the HEAT team, Representative Jeff Duncan.
I think they want us to use these mics, so even though I'm a loud talker, we'll do that. Well, first off, thank Dan as chairman of the Western Caucus. I want to thank you for hosting this forum and inviting the House Energy Action Team to be a part of it. I chair the HEAT with Whip Scalise and Congressman, future Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, and also serve on the Energy and Commerce Committee. Hope to chair the Energy Subcommittee in the next Congress, and so we're very interested in this topic and hearing from our witnesses. Thank you for coming and participating today. You all have an important story to tell, and I'm excited that we're going to hear it. It's only fitting that part of the Clean Energy Week is spent highlighting the role of oil and gas industry, the role they play in reducing emissions. The United States has been the world leader in lowering carbon emissions, more than the next 7 emission-reducing countries combined from 2005 to 2020. Reducing emissions and increasing oil and gas production are not mutually exclusive. In fact, the inconvenient truth is that the U.S. would not have met these carbon emission reduction goals without natural gas. In 2019, the U.S. became a net exporter and energy independent. Gas and electric prices were low. The U.S. was the largest producer of energy on the planet. We have the ability to be the largest energy producer on the planet still. And we did all this while leading the world in emissions reduction. We can't say that enough. This time the Biden administration recognizes this reality and reverses the course of their attack on the oil and gas industry. They've taken a whole of government approach to regulating the industry out of existence through new taxes, increased regulations, restraining access to capital, limiting access to federal land, both onshore and offshore. The reality is the U.S. oil and gas industry has played an incredible role in reducing emissions, not only in the United States, but globally. More American energy production means lower emissions around the globe. Unfortunately, due to the other side's resistance to domestic pipelines, New England's forced to rely on natural gas from Russia and other foreign countries instead of Pennsylvania or Texas or Louisiana. This totally ignores the fact that Russian gas is dirtier and it's more expensive. Russian natural gas exported to Europe has a life cycle emission profile 41% higher than that of U.S. LNG exported to Europe. I'm sure Cheniere will talk about this today, but LNG exports offer an amazing opportunity to lower global emissions. Rather than restricting domestic energy production, increasing regulatory barriers to LNG terminals and natural gas pipelines, we need to unlock American energy resources. Export those resources, help our friends and allies around the world. Not only provide their energy needs, but also lower their carbon emissions through cleaner burning United States produced LNG. It's imperative providing clean, affordable, and reliable energy to their consumers, our consumers, and to the globe. In order to continue to lead the world in emission reduction, it's imperative we create a regulatory environment that allows for innovation. Many of the companies and groups testifying today are proven examples of this. Innovation, not regulation, will allow the U.S. to continue to lead the world in emission reduction and pave the way to energy dominance. An apt title for this forum today. So I want to thank all of our witnesses for being here. I want to thank all the industry folks that are here to listen, maybe participate. Look forward to your testimony. Unfortunately, votes are going to get in the way of active participation, an active role that I'd hoped to play. I want to thank all my colleagues on the Western Caucus and the House Energy Action Team. I look forward to hearing their questions, at least maybe looking at the answers by videotape. And I want to thank you again, Dan, for hosting this forum with HEAT. And I look forward to working with you in the next Congress as we move this nation forward to energy dominance. And you'll that's fine. With votes being called, let's giddy up straight to questions. Maybe some of the members can get their questions out of the way. So Doug Lamar from California, ask away.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that indulgence, and I intend to write up and down as I can between votes if that's feasible. I'll watch into it. Okay, thank you, panelists. Sorry I'm going to head you off to pass on opening statements, but I'm looking forward to interaction. one of my concerns is I'm watching people in energy, especially the energy that has to do with gas and petroleum and like that. And I'm seeing a disturbing trend that it seems the industry is kind of surrendering towards not producing the energy they produce anymore. They're shying away from further exploration, further investments. The ESG thing seems to be taking over at a lot of the corporate levels. We're like, well, we're gonna try and go in a direction here, not do carbon things anymore. Yet I don't see how we're not going to have hydrocarbons as part of our future here. I even noticed today, Ford Motor Company is developing a new line of heavy-duty trucks that has even more and bigger gas engines in them, because they see that their heavy-duty trucks are still gonna have to go that way, okay? And not all electric everything. So I guess for the panel, and it's really disturbing because I've seen the CEOs and everybody talking this talk, but they don't really want to produce, it seems, the product that they're good at producing, whether it's petroleum, natural gas, and further exploration of it. Is that being damped down by government, or is it the direction with this ESG thing? Please, each of you, I'd like to have you touch on that. Thank you.
You want?
Please.
So, Congressman, appreciate the question. Dan Newhouse with the Independent Petroleum Association of America, and our average member size is 20 people. They really are the face of small business across the country, and I can tell you our members are completely committed to producing oil and natural gas across the country. The shale revolution was really driven by the independent producers, and so our members understand how important it is. We're going to continue to do that. It's basically their lifeblood and the lifeblood of a lot of communities. So understand the role of environmental protection and doing things right, and we're going to continue to do that. Always improve. But our members are certainly committed to continue to produce in the United States both oil and natural gas.
Thank you.
Khary Couthen with Cheniere Energy, the largest U.S. LNG exporter. And similarly, that's our business, right? We take U.S. fracked gas, freeze it into a liquid, and sell it internationally, and we're going to continue to do so. Congressman Duncan gave some of my remarks in his opening, but where we are working on, we call it a cargo emissions tag, where beginning this year, we began to, with every cargo, every vessel that leaves our Corpus Christi facility or Sabine Pass has a cargo emissions tag for the customer that basically gives the life cycle of the greenhouse gas emissions. That's part of our business model, in that there has been as Congressman in his remarks said, that there's this misnomer about U.S. natural gas and oil, that it's a dirtier source than that from other countries. And what our cargo emissions tag is seeking to do is we want our international customers to see that cargo emissions tag and ask for that same thing from their other providers, right? That we would put our U.S. Emissions portfolio against anyone else's, and we're doing that as a part of our business, as opposed to because we sell fracked gas, right?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Appreciate that. On that one, please.
Congressman, thank you for that question. That's a very important topic and something that is on the minds of our folks. I'd like Troy Lyons with the American Exploration Production Council. We represent the large independent U.S. oil and gas companies. I'd like to echo something that Dan said. I mean, our commitment is to ensuring that we are producing, particularly in these times of this energy crisis that we're in. We also think that the U.S. has the potential to not only create further emission reductions here, but also globally by continuing to put our cleanest molecules out in the global market. So, certainly there are obstacles that our industry faces, and that sort of goes back and forth between administrations, but our folks are committed to ensuring that we produce so that we can meet domestic and international energy needs of our allies.
Thank you. I'm running short of time, so please, last two.
Good afternoon, I'm Braniff with Exxon Mobil. I also would like to associate myself with some of the comments that the chair made, that Exxon is very concerned about the environment, but we're also concerned about meeting energy needs. We agree with you that even according to the International Energy Administration, we are gonna need more oil and gas in the future, and that is something that we do acknowledge. I wish you'll read the entirety of my prepared remarks later, but one of the things that I do address in my prepared remarks is that Exxon has increased our production over the last year in order to help meet this demand. So we see it as both dealing with emissions, but also being able to produce enough to meet the energy needs of society.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Tony Cottone with 1.5 Occidental. At Occidental, we are one of the largest producers of enhanced oil recovery oil. This utilizes CO2 for that operation. And so what you're getting at is the uncertainty that some of the ESG movements create in terms of particularly investing in longer cycle projects, right? And so how are we dealing with that situation? We see a world where you can continue to produce oil while utilizing that reservoir as a CO2 sink. And in doing so, you're producing a barrel of oil that is actually net neutral from a climate perspective. We now have more reserves at Occidental than we ever have had in history. We intend on producing those, but we also believe that the last barrel of oil will be not just a net zero barrel of oil, will be a net negative barrel of oil from a climate impact perspective.
Mr. Westerman, I'll turn to you.
I don't really know anything about this subject. Thanks for putting this together. Great to be a part of the HEAT team and the Western Caucus, and thank you to our distinguished panel for being here. I should have brought this chart with me, but it shows the global consumption of energy since 1800. From 1800 to 1900, it doubled. From 1900 to 1940, it doubled. From 1940 to 1962, it doubled. It doubled again in 1987, and just doubled, or is on the verge of doubling just recently. And it's a exponential curve. So the world is demanding more energy. And even in the United States, where we have probably a larger portfolio of non-carbon producing energy, we're still 61% of our energy comes from carbon-based sources. So here in DC, you get the impression that if everybody just drove an electric car, the world would be saved. But if you go through the math on that, if every car overnight was turned into an electric vehicle, it would reduce the global greenhouse gas emissions about 0.9%, so less than 1%. However, just, if you look at it, take a Toyota Camry for an example. It gets 34 miles to the gallon of gas burner. A hybrid gets 52 miles to the gallon. So that's like a 52% increase in efficiency. You could look at it as a 52% decrease in greenhouse gas emissions. Well, the most, on the transportation side, the most you could get with an EV Toyota Camry would be 39%, because that's where the electricity is made. So how do we get the message out that although electric cars are cool and they're fun to drive and they're the latest toy, they're not going to solve any kind of problem. And we're going to have oil and gas and coal. Every form of energy that's used today, there's more of it used today than has ever been used, including wood and animal manure, when you look globally. So what are you all doing to get the message out that you're still needed, even though people are telling you you're not needed, we're gonna have zero carbon fuel sources? It's not a reality, especially with the rest of the world demanding more and more energy every day. I'll open it up to anybody.
Mr. Westerman, thank you for that question. The way that we approach it is we look at it holistically in terms of, renewables are going to play a part of our nation's energy portfolio, but projections show that, as you pointed out, by 2035, energy demand around the world is going to grow by 50%, and there's still going to be that need globally for oil and gas. Analysis show that. I think one of the things that we have been really focused on is demonstrating how we are producing oil and gas and doing it better than other countries, and producing some of the cleanest molecules. One of the things that I focus on in my testimony is the investment that our industry has made over the last number of years in terms of advancing technology so that we can get better at detecting, mitigating, and reducing methane emissions. And that's something that we're on the cusp of, that is going to continue to advance. So we let folks know all the good things that we are doing in the industry, but letting them know that we are going to play a critical role moving forward.
Congressman, again, also thank you so much for everything you're doing on the Resources Committee. We really appreciate that as independent producers. But just to echo what Troy was saying, if you look at the numbers, the facts are the facts, and they're not industry facts. It's the EPA.
Yeah, the data I quoted was from EPA.
And what you'll see is, at the same time that you've had this incredible renaissance and revolution in the fracking revolution, production's up, oil's we're exporting oil, natural gas, CO2 emissions have gone down. And those are the numbers. And so what we often say is, look at the facts, look at the reality of what's going on. We're very proud of what we're doing. And every day, our industry across the board is, again, as I said, reducing the footprint. The fracking revolution is amazing what happens every day. So we're very excited about that. And finally, what I think we would say, we always say, our chairman says, look, with the Biden administration, we don't want to be adversarial. We want to be a partner. We understand that oil and natural gas aren't the only answer to America's energy needs, but we're going to need to be in that conversation. And unfortunately, we believe the administration is just trying to cut us out, which is it impacts the country at so many levels.
What would lead you to believe that?
Thank you for your question. You're absolutely right. If you were to transition all vehicles to EVs, you're probably looking at 15 to 20% reductions in global emissions. It's not just about that transportation sector, it's about energy, materials.
You're talking about all vehicles worldwide.
Worldwide, that's right. And so it's a big challenge, right? And the public needs to understand that it's just not vehicles, right? It's transportation, it's agriculture. There's emissions coming from basically everything that human beings do. In order to make that connection, things that we're working on are ways of tracking that carbon intensity of products and being able to communicate that to the end consumer. Effectively, what's not measured isn't managed, or you can't make decisions on that. So we think a good way to get society, consumers engaged is to allow them to make decisions based on the carbon intensity of those products that they buy.
And some people would say, well, 15% worldwide, that's a worthy goal, but that's 15% if it's all EVs and every electron going into EV came from a non-carbon emitting source, which is not even in the ballpark from what I've seen. Or do you have different data on that?
No, that's absolutely right. It's every other industry, steel, cement, transportation such as aviation, marine. How are you going to decarbonize heavy industry like aviation, marine without all liquid fuel? And so just better communications to the public that there are these hard to decarbonize industries that need other sources of fuels rather than electricity is very much needed.
So maybe more hydrogen development, more nuclear power, and even just improving efficiencies in the internal combustion engines that we have, and technology like hybrid cars would do far more than this totally focused effort on electric vehicles. That seems to be the left's answer to everything. It's, oh, we just need an EV. I yield that.
We talk a lot about where the United States is with carbon emissions, and a big attributable factor of that is natural gas. we had some challenges both in the United States and getting natural gas to certain areas because of pipelines. So you got the pipeline issue. And we also have a Jones Act issue. I say Jones Act, I don't wanna do anything with Jones Act unless it's emergency. Get an American Energy Jones Act waiver to meet needs of our nation in a time of war or natural disaster. But, so, without pipelines, you're not gonna be able to take the natural gas that helps us lower our emissions to the areas like New England unless you have an American flagged crude owned LNG vessel, which we don't have right now. And I believe American gas burns cleaner than any other. I would rather New England and really anywhere burn American gas versus Venezuelan or Trinidad or Russian gas. And so the challenges with pipelines is not just the New England states who don't like frack gas and, you know, decide they don't want a pipeline to bring frack gas from Marcellus up there. The challenge with pipelines is broader than that because of Mountain Valley and ACP and other pipelines have been proposed, and the regulatory environment, litigation cost that the companies face. So I would love to hear you guys talk about how we can meet the challenges from pipelines to get the product to the consumer, primarily natural gas, but truly it probably amounts to oil if you think about Keystone, XL, and other pipeline issues we're either facing or going to face going forward. Permitting process of getting product from where it's produced offshore or onshore to the refineries. There's just a lot of challenges, and it seems like this administration will continue to throw roadblock after roadblock in the way of permitting pipelines, and then the environmental movement will throw roadblock after roadblock in the term of litigation of those pipelines, like we saw with the two I mentioned earlier, Atlantic Coast Pipeline and West Virginia. So I'd love to hear you guys just mention how we can address it as members of Congress, legislation going forward, how we can address the regulatory environment, the impediments to pipelines, and if you want to touch on, because Cheniere's here, touch on LNG, the movement of LNG within the waters of the United States, because we can't do that with foreign flag vessels. So with that, I just throw that out there for them.
It's funny that my initial answer to your question is moving away from selling my product, in that really the easiest way for certain areas of the U.S. to get natural gas is through pipeline, full stop. That if the Northeast were to receive LNG from the Gulf of Mexico, it would be, just understand, it would be LNG that was made from natural gas that came from the Marcellus to then come back around to them through a vessel. So your question is the right one, honing in on pipeline infrastructure. We have a whole division our gas supply division, that is sourcing natural gas from really all of the shale plays around the country. And that is one of the things that keeps them very alert, is U.S. policy toward infrastructure. U.S. policy toward infrastructure on public lands, on, we have a blessing in this country of private lands that people can decide what they want to do with their lands. But the challenge still remains that the connectivity, right, and a long-term vision on where we want our pipeline infrastructure to be, as opposed to many times government is in fits and starts.
Well, I'll address the second half of that question, which is permitting reform and what you and your colleagues could do to be helpful. As I'm sure you're all aware, there was a slight discussion on permitting reform on the Senate side, which didn't make it across the finish line. And our company, as well as with our trade associations and our friends who are at this table, also were engaged in conversations to find more certainty, some NEPA reform. I think there's benefits to potential changes in regards to judicial review. And so these are all ideas that we're happy to share with you, that we've already started to work through the process, that we would hope a more robust conversation on permitting reform can either happen post-election or in the new Congress. And I will say too, that not only applies to natural gas, but that can also apply to the newer fuels out there such as hydrogen as well, which I will chat about a little bit in my prepared remarks.
And that's the time, because we have to go vote, but let me just wrap up with, I hear from my CPWs, the Commissions of Public Works, other utilities that draw natural gas off of the Lyons pipeline that goes up through South Carolina. And it's at about a capacity or saturation rate, and that there's not gonna be in the future enough gas coming through that pipeline to meet all the demands, all the sources that are currently pulling off, much less any future growth of cities and manufacturing. So, we also heard in the House Energy Action Team, gentleman that produces natural gas in the Marcellus, he can produce all the gas that, we could ever use. He just doesn't have anywhere to send it because he doesn't have any pipelines. And so, we've got this abundance, we just gotta get it to the market. And that's where I think this next Congress is gonna be important in permitting reform and expediting pipelines and looking at some way to stop some litigation efforts or calls to maybe a loser pay on energy project. I don't know what the answer is, but permitting is the first step. And I'm glad to hear the Senate's done some work on it, for talking with them and working with you guys to see if we can get permitting reform, because pipeline is the key right now. That was Chairman, I go back.
Thank you, Bishop Duncan. Let me go to Ohio. Bill Johnson, sir, you got the floor.
Well, thank you, Chairman Newhouse, and thanks to our co-chairs of the House Energy Action Team for hosting this important National Clean Energy Week forum. I think we'd all agree that since last year's Clean Energy Week event, a lot has changed in the global energy landscape. I mean, some would say that we're in a global energy crisis, and I would agree with that. I think some people don't know they're in a crisis yet, but they're about to find out pretty soon. You've got the war in Ukraine, rising inflation, supply chain snarls are all playing a role, but so are policy choices. Policy choices made on both sides of the Atlantic, including here in the United States. Policy choices, some would say, will get us to net zero carbon emissions, to avert a so-called climate catastrophe if we simply get with the program. Well, that'd be great, but there's a catch. To accomplish this goal, we need to give up energy independence. To meet their goals, we have to give up energy independence. We have to accept intermittent electric power and become dangerously dependent on China for the components to build out this new green future that everybody's talking about. Friends, there has to be a better way, and I believe there is. In fact, from what I'm hearing from my colleagues and some of the witnesses that we have today, we do have solutions that actually work, but to achieve these solutions, we must remain the defenders of affordable and reliable energy, while still moving the ball forward and reducing emissions and protecting the environment. We can walk and chew gum at the same time, to coin an old phrase. We've done it before. We can do it again. I'm not going to single him out right now, but Troy Lyons here with AXPC. AXPC published a great statistic that I have used a lot. I'm sure many of you have probably already heard it. And that is, if we simply quadruple American liquefied natural gas exports from where we are today, which would replace dirtier fuels overseas, the resulting global emission reductions would be the equivalent of electrifying every car in the United States, powering every American home with rooftop solar and battery backup, and building 54,000 industrial strength windmills. Combined, all of that stuff combined, we could overcome all of that by simply quadrupling the amount of natural gas that we're exporting. And I think it goes without saying which one of these options is more feasible and more right for America, quadrupling our exports. We could actually do that. So Troy, now I am going to put you on the spot. Global demand for energy is only going up and will for the foreseeable future. If oil and natural gas isn't coming from America, it'll be provided by dictators like Vladimir Putin, who don't care about the environmental impacts of his producers. Can you explain to us how America's producers are leading the way not only to foster American global energy dominance, but also providing the world with resources in the cleanest way possible?
Yeah, Congressman, good to be with you here today. I appreciate that question because the U.S. does have an important role to play, and your district is ground zero for that. What is being produced in your district has the ability to meet our demand here domestically, but then also with our allies overseas. And when we are strengthening the U.S.'s security posture, we're also doing that with our allies, who right now we've seen over the last years, and this year in particular, the weaponization of Vladimir Putin's natural gas supply to Europe. We saw this last few days the sabotage of the Nord Stream 1 pipeline, essentially cutting off gas to our allies. It's a shame that it's being used as a weapon. You have been one of the first to really look at LNG exports. Your legislation to help streamline approval of permitting, has been extremely helpful in moving that narrative forward. So we can help our allies on the security front. We can help our allies meet their global climate commitments, and we just need to be able to get the regimes in place that allow for those permitting and infrastructure to support it to move forward.
Okay, all right. Khary, real quick, and again, I hate to move so quick, but going to you with Cheniere, you mentioned in your testimony that you're proactively working on initiatives to measure and reduce methane emissions, not because of some government edict, but because it can actually help provide a competitive advantage for American LNG on the world market. Can you tell us a bit more about how that works and why cleaner American LNG can get us this competitive advantage with overseas customers?
So, Khary, I'm going to give you a second to gather some thoughts there and let Mr. Stauber make one statement before we continue.
Thank you very much, and thanks, panelists, for being here. Pete Stauber, represent Minnesota's 8th Congressional District, and I'm just going to make some comments because I got to run upstairs and get the vote through. But thanks for being here. Energy dominance, mineral dominance, we do it better here. Best environmental standards, best labor standards, and we are all in to do this. In just a couple of weeks, it's going to be below zero for a long time in my great state of Minnesota. We need reliable, affordable, clean energy. Otherwise, we don't exist. And you folks are helping us do that. Thank you very much.
What I'd like to do now is our original intention of allowing you to make a presentation. We are recording this. We're going to be broadcasting this. Certainly, the information is going to be key as we highlight the advancements in technology that we've been making. So I'm going to start with Mr. Naatz. Dan, if you could, I'll let you introduce yourself somewhat. I'll give you that opportunity. You are the Chief Operating Officer and Executive Vice President of the Independent Petroleum Association of America. Look forward to your comments, and thank you very much for being here.
Well, Chairman Newhouse, thank you very much, and I'll again, there's been such a robust discussion. I'll keep these brief, but we really appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony here. Just a little bit about IPAA. IPAA represents thousands of independent oil and natural gas explorers and producers across the nation, as well as the service and supply companies that support their efforts. As I said, our average member company is 12 full-time employees and 3 part-time employees, and the business has been running for over 26 years on average. one of the things we want to stress is that independent producers continually look to develop creative solutions to problems that exist within the scope of oil and natural gas production on federal, state, and private lands. And really, as we talked about, the energy renaissance that happened, as happening, continues to happen in the United States, it was driven by independent producers, and we're very proud of that. We have a number of challenges with the Biden administration and their attacks on American oil and natural gas producers has been relentless. Changes in tax treatment, increases in federal regulations governing the industry. It seems that the administration is intent on really significantly impact the ability of our members, but producers across the board, everybody on this panel, from producing here in the United States. What I would say to the chairman's question regarding what we should do is just to look at the facts. And one of the answers I was thinking about as to the chairman's question is, if you look at the facts, what we've been doing, what the industry's been doing, is key to environmental protection. And I'll just give you a few numbers. Total U.S. greenhouse gas emissions continue to decline despite increased production and consumption of natural gas. Total CO2 equivalent of United States greenhouse gas emissions dropped 11.6% from 2005, and methane emissions are down 16.6% since 1990, despite record American production of oil and natural gas. Also look at, there's a lot of discussion on methane. There's roughly 17% drop in methane emissions can be attributed to the industry's investments in reducing leaks, improving pipeline infrastructure. And again, these numbers come from the EPA, not the IPAA. So I want to respect the time and give my colleagues the opportunity. I think I'll stop there, but again, just want to say we appreciate the opportunity. Want to talk about, there's so many issues of regulatory reform, NEPA reform, allowing our members the flexibility to protect the environment, have a regulatory scheme that provides flexibility, because if you look at our record, the industry's been amazing at finding solutions to very difficult challenges, and we're going to continue to do that. So thank you very much today.
As stated, I'm Khary Cauthen, Vice President for Federal Government and Public Affairs with Cheniere Energy. Cheniere was the first company to export LNG from the lower 48 states beginning in 2016. And to date, we've shipped more than 2,300 cargoes to 37 countries and 37 countries and regions around the world. So far this year, we've produced approximately 11% of the total global LNG, helping to establish the U.S. as the largest LNG exporter in the world. We're proud of our leading role in the domestic and global natural gas market that bolsters demand for greater upstream natural gas production, creates jobs here at home, and providing a reliable and clean source of energy for our friends and allies around the globe. The energy, and as we've discussed, the energy dynamics associated with the tragic events in Ukraine further demonstrate the importance of U.S. LNG. As Europe sought to address energy shortfalls, the U.S. has provided additional supplies of LNG. Since the beginning of the year, over 70% of Cheniere cargoes were delivered to Europe to help meet their growing demand. And we estimate that one LNG cargo provides heat for about 1 million Europeans for a month. U.S. natural gas production and LNG exports are also helping to reduce global emissions. The International Energy Agency has identified fuel displacement as the quickest route to emissions reductions, with the potential to reduce global power sector emissions by 10%. The IEA also estimates that switching from coal to natural gas has helped limit the rise in global CO2 emissions since 2010 and avoided more than 699 million metric tons of CO2 emissions between 2010 and 2020. On average, LNG provides 47 to 57% less greenhouse gas emissions than coal when generating about the same amount of electricity. To answer Congressman Johnson's question, at the same time, Cheniere seeks to provide transparent emissions data to our customers and better understand emissions along our value chain. As I mentioned earlier, this year we began providing our customers with greenhouse gas emissions data for each LNG cargo. These cargo emissions tags are an estimate of life cycle greenhouse gas emissions of LNG cargoes from the wellhead to the point of delivery. Cheniere is continuously working to improve the emissions data utilized in these cargo emissions tags to better inform our customers, but not as a certification kind of program. Under our QMRV program, we are working with supply chain partners and leading academic institutions to directly quantify, monitor, report, verify greenhouse gas emissions. Again, to both improve the cargo emissions tag data and identify opportunities for emissions reductions over time. These initiatives seek to provide a key commercial advantage for Cheniere and US LNG as we compete with foreign entities to sell LNG to global customers. Looking forward, Cheniere will continue to grow. Earlier this year, we announced that we are moving ahead with our expansion project in Corpus Christi, Texas, to build additional US LNG export capacity, and we have additional growth opportunities at our Sabine Pass facility in Louisiana. But as has been stated many times, we need policy and regulatory certainty to help underpin all of our efforts and continued success. And so again, thank you for giving me the time.
Great. Thank you for facilitating today's discussion. Troy Lyons with the American Exploration Production Council. We represent the large independent oil and gas producers. I think it's important to recognize that innovation and ingenuity are the backbone of the oil and gas industry. It is because of our investment, our innovation, that we have the shale revolution that has taken our country from one of energy scarcity to energy abundance. And through emerging technologies, engineering, and technological advances, we've been able to advance with hydraulic fracturing, horizontal drilling, which has really changed the way that we're able to produce, to tap into more abundant resources, while also limiting our above surface footprint. There are a number of areas that we continue to look at advancements. We touched on the methane emissions. Our industry continues to invest every year on the newest and latest technologies, but those technologies will only work if the government allows them to work. As EPA is moving forward with its methane regulations, we urge them to ensure that they provide flexibility and not a one-size-fits-all approach in terms of what type of technologies can be used in terms of methane detection and mitigation. We've talked a lot about LNG exports. We just feel that this is one of the greatest tools that we have and is under our feet to be able to combat global climate goals. Through advancements, we've been able to turn natural gas, as Khary said, into LNG and ship it around the world. Currently, when you're looking at the world's energy mix, as Mr. Westerman was saying, about a quarter of it comes from high-emitting fuels. One of the most important actions we can take to address climate change is to displace these type of fuels with US LNG. We have become the largest exporter. We have the ability to build on that if the right regulatory regimes are in place. And one of the things that we have done at AXPC is a lot of people have said, we need to produce more, we need to export more, but nobody really got into the nuance of it. So a few weeks ago, we released the Unleash US LNG policy agenda that we'll share with everybody, that looks at 4 major pillars, including international finance, permitting reform, and modifications to the Natural Gas Act to help facilitate additional production as well as the ability to export. So appreciate the opportunity to address you all today, and I'll turn it over to my colleague, Mimi.
Thank you, Troy, and thank you again for holding this forum. I'm Mimi Braniff, Head of Federal Government and Regulatory Affairs at Exxon Mobil. Again, I appreciate this opportunity to highlight some of the work our company is engaged in here in the United States. At Exxon Mobil, we continue to leverage our core capabilities to advance our strategic priorities and to make the investments needed in this long cycle business. With our sense of purpose and consistent approach, we will successfully address the dual challenge of providing energy and products society needs while lowering greenhouse gas emissions. Representative Curtis, one of the vice chairs of the Western Caucus, recently outlined in a blog, we must work together to attack emissions, not energy sources. This is a sentiment that Exxon Mobil agrees with. My CEO has stated, the challenge is emissions, not oil and gas itself. It is the emissions associated with the combustion process, which is what we need to address. For example, we have the opportunity to address emissions through carbon capture and storage. We as a company share your commitment to reliable, affordable, clean domestic energy. Exxon Mobil is now organized along three primary businesses: upstream product solutions, which is a combination of our downstream and chemical operations, and low carbon solutions. Exxon Mobil aims to achieve net zero emissions from its operated assets by 2050 and is taking a comprehensive approach centered on developing detailed emission reduction roadmaps for our major operating assets. This ambition applies to Scope 1 and Scope 2 greenhouse gas emissions and builds upon the company's 2030 emissions reductions plans, which include plans to reach net zero emissions in our Permian Basin unconventional operations. According to International Energy Agency global data, global energy demand will continue to rise in the coming decades, and oil and natural gas will continue to be needed to meet that demand. While we're committed to addressing our emissions, we're also committed to addressing the energy needs of Americans and those across the globe. Exxon Mobil is well positioned to meet the expected demand for oil and natural gas through the next decade, delivering the value while also seeking to minimize environmental impact. We're bringing on new barrels of oil to market today, largely due to the investments we made through the pandemic-driven downturn. We continue to grow our Permian Basin production and are on track to deliver a 25% increase in production versus full year 2021. We're also investing in U.S. unconventional production in the areas of the Eagle Ford and the Bakken. And I want to circle back to a concept that I noted at the beginning of my remarks. We can focus on emissions and continue to meet clean energy needs. The Permian Basin for Exxon Mobil represents more than 40% of our net upstream production. The Permian is a great example of how we can grow energy production while lowering emissions. Our emissions in the Permian have declined even though we have grown production. In early 2021, Exxon Mobil announced our low carbon solutions business to commercialize our extensive low carbon technology portfolio. Low carbon solutions is initially focused on carbon capture and storage, hydrogen, and biofuels. For CCS, we're helping to accelerate the broad development of CCS investments by leveraging our project expertise, operating experience, facilities footprints, and longstanding technology leadership. In Houston, ExxonMobil and a number of other companies have expressed an interest in supporting a hub concept in the Houston industrial area. We believe that by 2040, it could be possible to capture 100 million metric tons of CO2 from refineries, chemical plants, and power generation facilities in the area. ExxonMobil is part of the Greater Houston Partnership, an association of 900 member companies in the Houston region, which has prioritized the effort to position Houston as a leader in low carbon energy sources. We are also delighted to recently have received the support of 12 Texas delegation members, including Congressman Babbitt, on a letter to support a hydrogen hub in Houston, Texas. As a foundational investment in the development of the Houston hub, this year ExxonMobil announced plans to build a large-scale hydrogen plant in Baytown, Texas. We anticipate the facility will have the capacity to produce up to 1 billion cubic feet of hydrogen per day, combined with carbon capture, transport, and storage of approximately 10 million metric tons of CO2 per year. This project is a meaningful step towards a hydrogen future. These are just a few highlights of projects that ExxonMobil is working on. From our perspective, in order for our industry to grow to meet the demand for reliable, affordable, clean energy over the long term, government should support sustained investment through clear and consistent policy that promotes U.S. resource development. This policy could include regular and predictable lease sales, as well as streamlined regulatory approvals and the support for infrastructure such as pipelines, as we've discussed today. We support multiple priorities articulated by this caucus, such as NEPA reform, developing low-cost energy to create economic and energy security, and the support for American innovation. We appreciate the partnership we've developed with individual members and staff within the caucus and look forward to continuing our working relationship to ensure the nation's energy priorities are met. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tony Cottone, and I'm Vice President of 1.5, the Carbon Management Business Unit within Occidental. I would like to begin by thanking Western Caucus Chairman Newhouse and Congressman Duncan for the opportunity to testify today. We appreciate the chance to celebrate National Clean Energy Week with you, all by sharing a little bit about what Occidental is doing to address greenhouse gas emissions. I'd like to begin with a brief description of Oxy. We are a global upstream oil and gas and chemical company that is positioning ourselves for a low carbon future. As the fourth largest publicly traded oil and gas producer in the United States, we produce over 1.1 million barrels of oil equivalent per day. Our domestic operations range from the Permian Basin in West Texas to offshore platforms in the Gulf of Mexico, while the international operations range from Oman to the United Arab Emirates, among other countries. As one of the world's largest CO2 enhanced oil recovery, or EOR operators, we have over 4 decades of experience in carbon management. Our EOR involves injecting carbon dioxide, or CO2, into depleted oil and gas reservoirs to enhance the recovery of the remaining oil and gas reserves that otherwise could not have been recovered. The CO2 used in this process is safely and permanently stored in the reservoirs in this process. Oxy knows CO2. We know how to transport it, how to use it, and how to store it. We are building upon our knowledge and experience with CO2 to offer engineered technology solutions to address climate change. We were the very first American oil and gas company to establish comprehensive net zero greenhouse gas emission goals, including net zero GHG emissions from our worldwide operations and energy use before 2040, with an ambition to achieve before 2035, net zero for our total greenhouse gas emissions and inventory, including from the use of products, with an ambition to achieve before 2050, and finally, negative life cycle greenhouse gas emissions thereafter for energy and products through carbon removal and storage technology and extensive deployment of direct air capture, or DAC. These goals align our 11,800 employees in leveraging our expertise in carbon management to dramatically lower the net carbon intensity of our energy and products. We are focused on capturing and permanently storing more carbon than is released from the production and use of our products each year. We can do this while producing energy that is affordable, reliable, and importantly, clean and low carbon. Oxy's 1.5 business unit is tasked with developing and deploying carbon management technologies. We are pursuing a variety of carbon capture, utilization, and storage technologies, but today, I'd like to focus on our direct air capture project. DAC technology is essentially a machine that removes CO2 from the air. Large fans pull air through an air contactor. This air contactor brings in air in contact with a solvent that chemically captures CO2 from the air. This captured stream of CO2 can then be safely and permanently stored in geologic reservoirs deep below the surface, either via EOR or dedicated storage wells, or even used to make carbon-based products. Oxy has been studying and testing DAC technology with our partners Carbon Engineering and Worley for several years. We're excited to announce that in November, we will break ground on a major direct air capture facility near our existing oil and gas assets in West Texas. We expect to employ about 1,000 people during the construction phase. Upon completion in 2024, the facility will capture 500,000 metric tons of CO2 from the air, which is over 100 times more than all other direct air capture facilities built in the world today to date. To put the scale of our project in context, that is like taking emissions of 100,000 cars off the road every year. Our goal is to deploy 70 to 135 of these direct air capture facilities around the world by 2035. I'd like to thank you for your support of carbon management technologies. The increased 45Q tax credit values advanced by a number of bipartisan bills over recent years are incredibly important in supporting the research, development, and deployment of carbon management technologies. The credit will help jumpstart these technologies and ensure the United States remains a leader in innovation and advancement. Countries around the world look to 45Q and our bipartisan policies as the gold standard for incentivizing carbon management. Thank you again for the opportunity to share our story. Oxy is making serious investments in carbon management, and we want to serve as a resource to law and policymakers. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions, no matter how small. We're here to help. I look forward to answering any more questions that are coming our way.
Wonderful. Well, we appreciate you all taking time out of your busy schedules to be here and highlighting the amazing work that you guys are doing, helping us celebrate National Clean Energy Week. So thank you so much again for helping us look at more of the clean energy advancements happening in the oil and gas sector and the importance of the work that you all are doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.